Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Big West Mafia Show, part of College Football Mafia. I'm your host, Sergeant Pickles, and with me, as always, is the fantastic Becky Go Huskies. How we doing, Becky?
I'm doing good. As you can tell, I got a little bit of sun this weekend.
Yes,
So,
that as you can see from my completely blown out video here, due to the constraints of my room, it is quite sunny here in Seattle. Yes, it does happen. It happens here in the Pacific Northwest, and we enjoy it greatly when we do get the sunshine.
and we'll never tell you guys when it's coming because
Correct.
we don't want you to come here.
We have enough people here. It's quite expensive already, but we're excited to join the Big Ten, and we'll lie to them until tell them it doesn't have nice days here in the fall until they all come out to pay us a visit, and it's beautiful and 70 degrees in October.
Yeah.
So it's been an interesting week. It's been an off week, and you know me as always. I like to have a little bit of fun at the beginning of the show, and of course we had our illustrious United States cricket team defeating Pakistan in the greatest upset known to man.
Go US.
I gotta be
Go
able to...
USA cricket.
I have never seen cricket a day in my life, but this was explained to me as an AAU basketball team of semi-pros beating an NBA team. And it's funny because not a lot of people, I'm guessing, watch cricket, but as soon as America wins anything, we're just like, yeah, Eagles and
it's America.
America. We are very much behind our teams when they defeat people. So we just try to be best in the world at everything. And if we're not very good at it, we just pretend it's not a sport.
Yep. I mean, I was like, you said semi-pros. Like, hey, this is like a beer league softball team beating the Yankees. Like,
from what I was told, the
USA real jobs.
Yeah, the USA cricket team players all have real jobs. Like they get, they generate a little bit of money to go to these tournaments and everything, but they're semi-pro players by any definition. So it's absolutely crazy.
I was gonna say, like, one of the dudes, he's like a executive or like vice president or something at like Oracle. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And obviously there's a lot of, immigrants from other countries where cricket's popular, but it is super cool to see that we have enough people in this country that if you love a sport, if you love any sport, it's supported here to some level and you have an opportunity to do it. And I think that's awesome. So go Team USA. I hope they win the whole thing. And they're the cricket version of Hoosiers.
Yeah. I mean, that's an accurate description. I'm going to start saying that. I'm going to be like, let's go Hoosiers.
Yes. And we've been known to mention this probably a few times because we've been lamenting it, but the death of our good friend, the Pac-12, it's happened several times. There have been several moments that have occurred for us, but finally the very last Pac-12 team in a sporting event, the Oregon State Beaver baseball team, was eliminated, and thus ends the Pac-12 as we know it. And this meme is near and dear to my heart because we truly love the Conference of Champions despite all of its flaws. It was amazing, and I will remember it fondly despite how crazy other people think we are out here in Pac-12 land.
I'm going to remember all the good things. I am not going to miss any trips to the desert.
No, certainly not.
Brutalist.
My goodness, rest easy, Pac-12. It doesn't come official, and I'm sure we'll bring it up 10 more times because that's what we do. But it's it weighs heavy on our hearts. Our good friend, the Pac-12, is no more, and as much as we're thankful to be in a new home with new friends, but it's that nostalgia that gets you in the end. Real quick, we got quite a lot of people in here joining us on a beautiful day, at least here in sunny Pacific Northwest. Timothy Green. Got to say, never thought I'd see a tree as a mascot. That's why I love college football. Go Mountaineers. Absolutely, Timothy. Some of our other members, Glenn Luman popping in from the Philippines. Cash is king. Yep, we'll certainly talk about that. But, we've been criticized heavily for saying, well, Stanford has more cash than they would know what to do with. But it's like, no, that's research cash. Well, that might be changing. That might be changing on how they spend their cash. Good friend Daniel Gygax stopping in, and Rory McNamara. UW fan, I would love for Stanford and Cal to join the Big Ten. that was a sentiment for quite a while. And if you know your Pacific Coast Conference history, it was always the five teams were the academic, and relative powers. It was Washington, Stanford, Cal, UCLA, and USC. Keep in mind, pre-Phil Knight, Oregon was not necessarily a top leading member of the Pac-12 conference or Pac-10 before it. So it was surprising to see that Stanford and Cal got left out in the cold. But I'm curious if the Big Ten is even open to coming full circle. What's your quick thought on that? We'll obviously touch on it more later.
I don't think both. Maybe Stanford. There's like something about being associated with Stanford, and a lot of it, forget research money and academics. You can go into academics a little bit with them, but really what it's for is they want Stanford grads, Cal grads.
Yeah.
They want them transferring to their schools. That's the whole purpose of that.
Yeah.
That like alliance essentially is to get them transferred and make it easy because the academic standards are right on par. That's why like you can see a UW player go to a Stanford. You can see a UCLA player go to a Stanford. You can see a Wazoo player go to a Stanford because they try to balance their academics enough that if they want to transfer or graduate or something like that, they can do that because they'll academically qualify. Because Stanford requires everybody to academically qualify.
Well, don't spoil it all.
Not
yet.
an athlete.
We'll
I know. We'll get there. We'll get there.
We'll come full circle. I got to ease.
But I'm saying no. But I'm saying that's always been the purpose. That has always been the purpose of the whole academia side, is so you can get easier, like you can get better and not just athletes. We're talking just students. You can get better students into your schools, like master's programs, doctoral programs, etc. From your conference members, because they'll keep the academics roughly where they need to be at a bare minimum to get in.
Yeah, people like being in conferences with other member schools, and not to dismiss the Big 12, but it is the exact reason that Stanford and Cal aren't in the Big 12 is because they see themselves on a different academic level, or at least having a different academic priority. But like I said,
it is why we
head first later on the nitty gritty of Stanford.
Yeah, and that reason is why we both believe UW probably would have gone independent before they joined the Big 12.
Possibly. Certainly possible.
Mm-hmm.
The tree should stay in the ACC. They love Notre Dame. Seriously don't care once FSU gets out. That's a common sentiment among ACC fans. Thank you for stopping in. But, yeah, that's a common sense like, oh, forget FSU. And there was a lot of that. I would say that was a lot of the same sentiment when USC and UCLA went. It seems to be history is repeating itself a little bit.
A little bit.
Our good friend Illini Ted. Yes, indeed. Happy little trees, my friends. And more in Stanford's case, it's happy little trees when they take copious amounts of acid. But we love our Stanford tree mascot. Shonsky, our favorite Big Ten hater, is here to give us some fair and balanced critique. We appreciate you as always, Shonsky, and we're happy everyone else is stopping in. Tony Lashin, Florida Edmonton Game 2. Who the Huskies got? I'm Florida all the way. I can't stand the Oilers. McDavid is an awesome player, but I hope they get swept. Or actually, no. Yeah, Florida get one game 1. I hope they get swept. Any hot takes on hockey quickly, Becky?
Who won game 1? Because I wasn't paying attention. Was it Edmonton?
It was Florida 3-0, even though Edmonton won all the statistical metrics. I believe it was Florida 3-0.
I think it'll be Florida, but I really want Edmonton to do it. Only because a Canadian team hasn't won it in 30 years now? It's been a long time.
Yes, Montreal in the late 90s, I believe. I forget the exact year, but it has been quite a long time. I'm trying to think of the last time a Canadian team even made the finals. But my hockey history knowledge is not what it used to be.
No.
I've been diving into other sports here.
I was the last team I remember is Vancouver. And
that would probably be it. Vancouver
10 years ago?
2011, 2013.
I just remember the riot. There was just the 30 for 30 about it. They had that riot when they lost.
Yes, Vancouver nearly tore half their city down because they lost Game 7 in the playoff. That was quite something.
Yeah,
a name I didn't think we would see, Genetics 56. Happy to see you in here. We're open for discussion, and everyone be nice in chat, play nice. We're here for fair criticism and alternating ideas, but Appreciate you having here, man. If you have any comments or anything we get wrong, feel free to fact check us in real time. We don't claim to be experts. We just like hearing the sound of our own voices up here.
But we do like to get those hot takes out there.
Yep. Hot takes for sure. Morris Simmons, go Knowles. Absolutely. And our good friend, Justin Kuzwalker. Let's go Mountaineers. We got a lot of Mountaineer friends in here, and it's cool to see.
Yeah. I'm always surprised by the number of Mountaineer fans there are. It's just it is wild. Like, I feel like there's more Mountaineer fans on Twitter than there is like in the state of West Virginia.
Well, they might live elsewhere though. There's
that's got to be it. Like,
absolutely.
It's like it's like people from Ohio. Like, there are more people from Ohio than actually in Ohio, because you're always like one stone's throw away from somebody who's from Ohio. I think I know more people from Ohio than I do people from Seattle.
People from Ohio cannot wait to tell you that they're from Ohio. I will say that.
It's true.
Daniel Gygax, last Canadian team was Montreal in '93, and last Canadian team was also that's right. The COVID year,
that's right. Yeah, the COVID year. Yeah.
Was it who were they playing that year? Oh shoot, I can't remember the save.
I think that was the Lightning. I think that was the Lightning.
That sounds right. They were playing Tampa.
Lightning. It was either the Lightning.
Good call there, Daniel. You're right on top of it. We appreciate it.
It was either the Lightning or it would be the Lightning, the Stars, or the Avalanche, because those are the only teams that have like won.
Those have been the recent powers, but it's almost like a funny meme. I don't have anything against the majority of Canadian teams other than some of them being our division rivals. It's almost just the meme that like it's Canada's sport and they haven't won it in God knows how long. So it's
30 years. I mean, I'm always fascinated because the first U.S. team to win it was obviously from Seattle, the Metropolitans, and they don't exist anymore. Because I always thought it was funny that the Metropolitans were the first U.S. team to win the Stanley Cup, but they were not invited to the NHL.
That was pre-NHL, though. It was a different era.
Yeah, but the arena, the grounds that the arena was on is now a skyscraper, so it's kind of funny.
It is indeed. Things change, but we have a fancy new building who I hope to see also with some Sonics colors hanging in there. But getting on to we're going to save a little bit of the West Coast news. We usually dive into that in the middle for all of our friends out there. But it's just been kind of a random news week. It's midsummer and some different things come out. But this one is kind of near and dear to you and I suppose, because we're both Department of the Navy veterans. Becky, the Navy itself, and myself, the Marine Corps. Army-Navy is now not going to be a standalone game. How do we feel about this? Does it matter to you? Does it not matter? How are we feeling about Army-Navy?
No, I mean, it's still the big game on the block. Those two bowl games aren't going to draw any fans.
No, especially in a CFP era.
Yeah. And I mean, like, I think this game should rotate around the country, personally.
I've heard that before, too. They should rotate it to, like, near military bases type thing.
Like, rotate it around, like, NFL stadiums for obvious reasons, because the two stadiums aren't that big.
Right.
But this game should be rotating around the country, I personally believe. And I think it would sell out no matter where it was. But I like it. It's fine. Those two bowl games, the bowl schedule it's obsolete anyway, but this game will actually matter. The only thing I've been curious about is because they're both now in the American Conference. How does that play out if they both go like undefeated and the winner has like they're going to be like, as far as like playoff and stuff like that goes, they could get ranked into the playoff before they play this game. How crazy would that be?
I love that it's a standalone thing, and I agree with you. Like, they need to revamp it because it's always kind of in Philadelphia or it's in DC, and it's of all the bowls that are now non-CFP, this is the one it'll still contain some juice because it is special, and I think it should be treated as special. I would love to see it as, even if it's not a standalone on the weekend, like a featured week 0 game. Kick off this. If it's just going to be buried in bowl season, kick off the season with it, both teams 0-0 records, and just let them crack at it. Because then you don't, like, if one's coming in with a super good record, there's the chance of the upset and everything, but you could still have all the pageantry of it. I believe at the beginning of the season, like, imagine a 50-50 Rose Bowl, 100,000 people, and all the veterans from the LA area. There's a Marine Corps base there. There's Navy bases. There's an Army base, Air Force base. All those people are coming out to the Rose Bowl. That would be an insane spectacle. And I think you're absolutely right. They could travel that thing around the country.
I think they could. And I mean, like, it's not a game. These are the two teams, along with Air Force, who don't need good weather. They're not going to throw the ball anyway. So that's why I'm like, just play it wherever. It'll sell out. I think it'll be a huge, massive draw. And I think it could grow college football a little bit more than it has. I mean, I think college football is getting huge, but I think this game itself could draw in new fans who are not really big fans of like any specific college team, but these two teams could gain fans. So plus, it's a good way to recruit for the academies, which not a lot of people know this, but you do not have, you can graduate from the academy and not get a commission as an officer. So
yes, under certain special rules.
Yeah.
But that there is a requirement. If you join the academy, you must play a varsity sport.
Yeah, you do have to play you do have to like be on a club team at the least or something like that. But
yeah.
Also,
it's interesting.
I mean, getting in is hard enough. I think you have to have like a letter from a senator or something like that on top of it. Like, well, good luck.
Yes, there are certain exceptions, like Medal of Honor recipients' children, but two people per state per year per academy.
Yep.
And it's very, very selective, and they're recruiting against like ironically, Stanford is the kind of school that goes after similar people to the academies. But it attracts a certain kind of person, and I don't know about you. It's never like highfalutin, crazy, high flying football, but it's just fun. It's special. It's different. And seeing the triple option run by dudes who honestly would give everything to win that game. It's like a really cool nostalgia trip into old school college football.
I was just about to say it's like watching something through a time machine because
I love it.
Nobody plays this anymore. I love it. I love watching the game. But and like they're both engineering schools. So it's like, they have high academic standards because of what they are. And
they're their own unique thing for sure.
Yeah, but I'm like, I love everything about it. Like from the president going there, regardless how you feel, doing the coin flip, splitting, like going one side to the other, the cadets, the midshipmen, all that stuff. It's all crazy, and then of course it's all like. It gets a little chippy and they don't like each other, but at the end of the day, it's for something else.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'll leave you with a final one. Go Navy, beat Army. I almost had it wrong there. I'd have to shame myself.
It's ironic because like, we're yanking your Marine card.
I should be more split than I am because my grandpa on my dad's side was Army and my grandpa on my mom's side Navy. So, but I was in the Department of the Navy and the Marine Corps, so. I'm gonna have to pick a side on that one.
Yeah, my dad went to the Naval Academy, but
there you go. Yeah, it's a special thing, and I think of all the things we've lost in terms of tradition in college football, I think they can move that around and turn it into something new to just preserve that little shred of what makes college ball special and what makes Army Navy special. So I hope they get it figured out. But kind of wrapping into that, we also got, I don't believe we covered this last week, the full release of the CFP schedule. And the one that stood out to me of all these games is they've got one Friday game and one Tuesday game. What do you think about, there's going to be a team or two that feel like they got screwed over because they're playing on the standalone game or playing a day early, less rest. And what do you think about them splitting the games like that?
It's smart. Because let's be real, who's playing at that time of year as well?
Yeah, post-conference championships, not a lot.
But
FCS playoffs, I mean, that's what they're going up against.
No, they're going up against the big dog on the block, the NFL, and then they're not going to outdraw. They're not going to outdraw. The average football game in the NFL draws 17 million people, so they're not.
I suppose we did hear that the NFL is not willing to remove their Saturday games, aren't they?
No, they're going to keep them. They're like adding on to it. Like that's why like having a Tuesday game, like I think it was a few people are like, oh, I wish like they would move the national title game to a Saturday or a Sunday. And it's like, do you know what goes on that weekend in the NFL? Those are divisional playoff games. Like they're not gonna go up against that. They have to have a standalone day, and the NFL won't put a game on that Monday. So that's why it's that late. So I like it. They have to use the bowl games. The bowl games have tradition. I mean, do you want to watch the Rose Bowl on January or on December 27th?
Yeah. I mean, people will be off work. A lot of people will be, it'll still be a special day, but I get why they've done it this way. I personally think it should have been home site the first 2 rounds and just rotating the semifinal games, because I actually expect that second week of games, in this case, the Fiesta, Peach, Rose, and Sugar Bowl, I think the attendance is actually going to be pretty bad for that. Because think about it from a team's perspective. If you're not one of the front runners and you're really expecting to make the championship game, are you going to shell out to go to potentially 3 straight big time road games that are going to cost you travel money, hotel money, etc.? I actually don't think so. I think it's going to hurt, and I don't think they care because the TV viewership will be just absolutely astronomical. But I think there's going to be a little bit lost in terms of in-arena atmosphere. If you're a front-running team, or you're the 1 seed, the 2 seed that second weekend, oh well, I'll just go to the Orange Bowl, the Cotton Bowl, and the championship. Why am I going to go to this first round game?
Yeah, I mean, I see where you're coming from with that. We're talking about there are going to be fans who are going to put the money aside, like they've already started.
But 3 weeks in a row, are they going to put it aside?
I mean, I had friends who I had friends who went to both New Orleans, flew all the way back here to Seattle, and then flew all the way down to Houston.
Right.
A week later. Yeah,
but even amongst the people that could do that, you're narrowing it down again. The people that don't have the spare money to do it a third time.
Yeah, no, it's going to be.
That's just my speculation.
I'll just be honest with you that national title game is about to get I think it's going to get the Super Bowl treatment when it comes to ticket prices anyway. They're going to be outrageous. They're going to be expensive.
Yes.
The thing that I am struggling with are the students, because they can't afford to do this. The regular students, they can't do 3 straight weeks.
No, the home sites will be really cool for that, though. That is the one thing I think is a positive, is that you're going to get some crazy atmospheres those first 4 games.
I'll just be a little more honest. The G5 school, if they advance, like say they get the home game and they advance, and then they advance again, and then they advance again, those stadiums aren't going to. They don't have as many fans as like a Georgia or at Ohio State or even like a Northwestern. So like even Stanford, they don't have the number of fans. And before people say anything, like if Stanford ever got in, they have fans everywhere because none of their alumni live in the Bay Area. They're rich.
Right.
That's those are the schools, like the Northwesterns, the Dukes, the Virginias, the North Carolinas, the Vanderbilts of the world. They're the ones that are going to be able to do this without a problem because their graduates are rich. So.
Yeah, my secret hope is that a Boise wins that first round game and gets to go to a big bowl for not only the old school Boise, Oklahoma nostalgia, but going to a game with all the money on the table and nothing to lose, because if Boise gets smacked in the second round, you've already won a game. You've already won a CFP game. You've won. Your season is a great success. That's the positive for the G5s, is that it's a total no lose scenario.
And I mean, let's be really honest here. Look where the games are. They're in the South. Those fans those fans can drive. They're not going to get on an airplane. They're going to drive. If Georgia wins their game, they're going to go to the Peach Bowl. Their fans aren't going anywhere. If Miami ever made it into the playoff and they won and they were able to go to their fans are going to have to. Maybe they'll end up at the Peach Bowl or they'll end up at the Sugar Bowl. They're shorter flights. And then if they make it to the Orange Bowl, they don't have to drive any. They can just, take public transportation. The biggest issue with all of these games are you have, and this is why I think the Rose Bowl and the Fiesta Bowl should always, one of the two should always be a semifinal, because the West Coast teams, all of those games, I'll be really honest with you, there were like 6 flights to New Orleans from Seattle. That was not an easy thing to do. A lot of people end up having to fly to like Biloxi, Houston, Baton Rouge, Pensacola, everywhere, like Memphis, anywhere but New Orleans, and then have to rent a car to get to the game. So
yeah, the Sugar Bowl is unique of the 6, because I think the other 5, they're all massive metros with pretty regular flights. So that's just a weird quirk of the Sugar Bowl. I don't know. Maybe they can improve the rotation somehow, but there's just too much sponsorship money to not play these games and rotate them.
And like Daniel Gygax pointed out, the first Pac-12 title game is at Stanford Stadium.
Yeah, indeed it was. Yeah,
indeed it was. And like I said,
not very good. It wasn't much better when they played at the 49ers Stadium either.
Yeah, Stanford's fans don't live in the Bay Area, and they were planning a trip for either a national title game or the Orange Bowl. I think they went to the Orange Bowl that year. But yeah, like they're not going to like. Also, we also need to point out, getting to Stanford is not easy for anybody who wants to travel to Palo Alto. Good luck. You have to rent a car to get there. It's not a city you can fly to.
Yeah, that will be interesting in the home site games to see what kind of away presence.
Yeah.
As much criticism as the we don't want the rematch game, I think that's a fun part of it. Is you could have some really, really cool opposing crowds in a rematch. Like some other friends, I'm going to throw his name out there because him and I discussed it, but Immaculate wasn't a huge fan of the potential double or triple rematches because of weird way a schedule would work out, where you're playing a regular season and a conference championship and possibly a rematch of the playoffs. I get that. I do.
That's life.
But that's ultra hate. That is like eternal glory level of hate. Washington and Oregon in the conference championship was awesome because of that. Like, win or lose, it was a great game.
And let's just be real honest here. What happens when the G5 decides they want to have a home game, at least in the first round?
They'll never let them.
They'll never let them. But if it did ever happen, we're going to watch Alabama fans invade like Kent State, or which were like these really tiny stadiums.
Yeah, like, it won't go that way because they'll never allow it. But
I'm just saying, like, but when it comes to like playing teams 3 times, you know where we see that? The NFL.
Indeed.
And those games, how good are those games? That, like, the last one I remember was like Jacksonville and Tennessee. I think Jacksonville had 2 losses all season, and both were Tennessee, and then Tennessee beat them in the AFC title game or something like that. So they beat them 3 times, which is hard. Eventually, you just kind of know each other like the back of your hand.
So. Yeah. I don't have the news story readily available. My apologies to chat for that. But if you didn't see, Danny Hurley is staying at UConn. He turned down the Lakers. What's your quick take on that? Because for me, I think he probably has aspirations to be in the NBA or to coach in the NBA because it's the biggest stage. But why on God's green earth would you want to be under the thumb of LeBron and not be able to run the team the way you want? So good for him for staying at UConn. We could speculate whether he would have turned down a similar offer for a different NBA job, but in my opinion, he made the right call. What do you think?
I think if LeBron was 10 years younger, he's the LA coach. No, I think it just came down to like you said, it's more of the control, and the players don't have the control. Like, LeBron has some say and stuff like that. But I think, like, who's in charge of the team, who's like, running it. If anybody's ever watched the Lakers, like they're terrible. And it's nothing like, it's not like they're going to be good or anything like that. They're just terrible. But I mean, UConn has a shot to be the first team since I think it was UCLA to win 3 straight national titles. So not go back. I mean, they built a roster that could do it again. I think he just felt that the NBA, it wasn't his time yet. So maybe he's holding out for a different job.
Yeah, and someone pointed out that given where UConn is in the recruiting cycle and getting into the next season, it would have been almost a not a death sentence, but it would have taken a massive hit to UConn going
into
into
next
year.
They'd have got
portal
UW.
would have opened up immediately, and it would have been pretty rough on a team like UConn coming off a championship
for 30 days. Like it would have been a 30-day open portal.
Yeah, they'd have been pilfered and plundered, and all the other coaches that would take a top-end job like that have already kind of found homes. So if you're wanting to take a guy at that level, you're talking massive buyouts and all sorts of it. It's just a bad situation. So I think this was the best outcome. And I like to see that top-end college jobs are still kind of regarded as viable. There are some coaches that might look at, they're just college coaches. And I hope that's still true because, you know, me and you in the Don James era, he was a college guy. That he was going to live or die by playing college ball. And I don't think that's the case for everyone anymore.
No.
Hey, real quick sidebar, Shonsky, for anyone, there's an interview today with Dennis Dodd in 365. Clarifies a lot of questions about Florida State leaving the ACC. Yeah, they're really plugged in. I mean, take Dennis Dodd for a grain of salt. I'm not going to vouch for his accuracy. I think I've disagreed with some of his points, but again, I'm just a dude in, you know, a spare room in my house. I have no connections, no sources. I've just disagreed with some of his opinions, but it's it's like Florida and ACC is it's too quiet right now. There's I get there's all the legal stuff, but it's like there's nothing happening, which is almost more concerning.
I keep telling people the loudest teams are the quietest teams.
Yes. And last one, Bomber and everyone touched on this on the Friday show where NIL, we keep talking about it, but it is just completely off the rails when you have high school quarterbacks legally receiving 700 horsepower sports cars. Not only is this just a bad idea, but is he actually providing a sponsorship service in return for something, or is this just a different way of throwing cash on the table for a kid to go to your school? Because that's where I think this has totally gone out of whack. Is if a guy does a commercial for a local business and gets, you know, a 10 grand paycheck, cool. That's what NIL should be. In my opinion, this is gone too far.
I think it's a little ridiculous. But I mean, at what age do we tell these kids, oh, you know what? You can start earning money for your play.
Yeah. It's the pay for play aspect of it that we've always hated. It's why we hated it even when it was illegal under NCAA, is that you don't want pay for play in a system where there's no guardrails.
And let's just be honest here. That only the top players are going to get paid. If I swear to God, if the punter starts getting NIL deals in these states, I'm going to be like, it's out of control.
You know, there's always Iowa.
There's always Iowa, but he's not Australian, so he's not going to get picked up there.
True.
Unless he's an Australian living in Missouri or Florida, where I think it's also legal. But I'm like, have you seen what 21-year-old, 22-year-old NFL players, NBA players, baseball players do when they get these cars? Like, what do you think a 17-year-old's going to do?
Yeah, I don't know who's paying that insurance,
smart.
But I doubt it's him.
Oh, 100%. If he's getting any kind of money, I would hope he just got an insurance sponsorship too, because he's going to need that free insurance, because I can only imagine what the insurance is on that car with a 17-year-old. Oh,
goodness. I mean, I don't have some sports car, and insurance is crazy enough for me as a middle-aged dad with a regular day job.
Yeah. I'm like, I drive a compact sport SUV, compact SUV. And I just re-upped my insurance last week, and my insurance went from $80 to $112. So I can only imagine what it's going to be. And obviously insurance rates are ridiculous right now too, but I can only imagine what that kid's like. I have a friend or a coworker who's got her son on it, and it's just, again, modest car. And she's like, our insurance went up $98. And it's not a sports car, so I can only imagine that the insurance cost for this is probably $150 more than what they were already paying. So,
and then not only the high school aspect of it, but of course you got Texas doing Texas things where they park a rack of Lambos outside of their giant longhorn shaped doorway. To me, this one isn't like as blatantly just like bad. It's just like, it's almost try hard. Like, you're the University of Texas. You have a proud football history, all the resources available, and yet you got to like throw Lambos out front. I mean, I don't know. That might just be me, as people can say, oh, I'm just jealous and this and that. It's like, yeah, of course I'd love to drive a Lambo, but you know,
what was it that they spent to get Arch Manning to like go there last year? Like on one recruiting trip?
It was more than 7 figures. I know that.
Yeah, like it's Texas. Everything's bigger in Texas, and apparently recruiting is too.
Yeah.
Again, if these are for the players, why?
Yeah. You're talking about injuries and insurance claims out the wazoo. You're going to have half your dudes on IR from wrapping them around telephone poles.
Oh, no, they're not even going to be on IR. They're just going to be suspended because they're going to probably get arrested for going like 180 in like a 60. Like,
yeah, looking at you, Georgia Bulldogs.
Yeah. Like, forget like the DUIs and stuff, because young people do stupid things. We've all done stupid things while we were like 22, 21 and drinking. We all do something stupid, but
yeah,
I didn't have access to this. I guarantee at 21, I would have been absolutely ridiculous with that.
Yeah. At least at Utah, I mean, they were doing the NIL vehicle thing. They were giving them a truck at least, where it's not some, 500,000 horsepower freaking supercar.
I forgot about the truck.
I think we're going to hear more stories of these kids like getting cars or in other bad situations, because I don't see how this doesn't lead to contracts where these people handing out NIL say, we're giving you this and you must agree to this. Like, it can't just be an open-ended, I can leave whenever I want and this and that. There's going to have to be some guardrails put in place.
There's things going to have to be done. This I keep saying, like, they need to create actual rules. And I know, like, the schools will just sue. Yeah, there's going
to be liability.
Look at your bylaws. Sure. Yeah, you need to look at your bylaws. The NCAA needs to look at their bylaws, get with some lawyers and get them updated with current laws, and then stay on it every like 10 years to make sure it's still within compliance. Like, the NFL has rules, baseball has rules, NBA has rules, NHL has rules. Everybody has rules.
We're certainly getting there.
College sports has none. Like, this is the Wild West. It's insane. Like, I could give a contract. I could pay, if I was rich enough, I could pay a kid 6 figures to go to the school, and all I got to do is say it's an NIL deal, and just show up once a month to my shop or whatever, and sign autographs for an hour. And if the kid doesn't show up, I could say he did.
I think we're kind of bypassing even that one. Apologies. If you hear a noise, I'm cracking open a fresh, cold Georgia Tech in my office here, because it is 70 some odd degrees outside, which is not hot for you down south. I understand, but I have no air conditioning. That is not a thing up here. It is not normal to have air conditioning in older homes like mine. If you'd like to donate to the College Football Mafia NIL Fund, we would greatly appreciate it. If you'd like to become a member, our guys are putting on some awesome members-only videos. Wild Youth's still doing his data analysis videos. And the most fun that I've had, and it seems like some people in the comments have had from our members, is arguing with Ute about his calculations and how he got his numbers if they don't favor your teams. But he's a easygoing guy. Like, as long as you keep it civil, it's fun to have those kind of chats. But he recently did last seat in the Big 12, Syracuse or UConn. And it's a pretty fascinating breakdown when you look at it.
I did not expect the outcome of that.
Man, UConn is a total boomer bust proposition. I will say that, not to spoil the video.
UConn, like the whole thing with UConn, they're just Gonzaga with a few more titles.
They're Gonzaga in a very, very big city.
Yeah, that's it. And with a football program. That's the only difference. They have national titles, a football program, and they're near New York.
Indeed.
Oh, well, technically they're in between New York and Boston, so they actually have.
Yeah.
But I think Connecticut's part of the tri-state, so
Yeah. But if you'd like to become a member and get access to these awesome videos and more other content we're putting out all the time, please consider becoming a channel member. And all your contributions help us get bigger and better content coming to you in the future. And here's how you can do so.
Want to become a member of the College Football Mafia family? Simply select the Join button from our homepage. There are several options with their own unique benefits to choose from. You can also set yourself to auto-accept gifted membership by selecting the gift settings options as shown.
Absolutely. And hook on over there. The one I failed to mention was Moen Presents. What if the Big 12 schools join the Pac-12? We're talking Texas, Oklahoma State, and I believe Texas Tech. What if they took the deal? What if Larry Scott did the right thing and made the first ever super conference? Moen does an awesome, what if scenario breakdown. It's really good. So if you are a channel member, become a channel member. Also consider gifting one to some other people out there in chat. Go head over and check it out after the show. All right, we're going to finally hop into it. We're going to jump in, do the trees, have a bunch of cash to just throw around willy-nilly. Because we got the news that was quite interesting. If you know anything about Stanford, they are one of the few programs in the country that, because of their grad programs, which are obviously extremely competitive, they don't make any concessions for athletes coming in. As far as football players, they don't have different requirements. But it sounds like that might be changing, Becky. What do you think about the fact that Stanford's saying, well, we might need to access this transfer portal too?
I mean, if you're a fan of basketball and the Olympic sports, this is a scary proposition. Like,
indeed.
A Stanford education goes a long, long way for people who aren't going to be professional athletes.
Yeah, one of our contributors here, Rock and Rain. Who says money doesn't grow on trees? Well, at Stanford it does, that's for sure. Moen?
Disagree.
Cheers to you, my friend. Syracuse, Greater Georgia Tech. I love them both. To be honest, I don't know if I've met a Syracuse or Georgia Tech fan or alumni in person ever, but we are out here on the left coast, so
every Syracuse alum I've met has like a journalism degree or something like that. I'm like, yeah, like you're working at, but hey, Ken, you're working at Dick's Sporting Goods. Like, what do you do?
So what do we think if Stanford? It seems to me like for the first time and I can never remember, they are actually easing their very extremely strict academic requirements, especially for their grad programs, because they are no joke competing with Ivy League schools in terms of grad programs. They are top level, like elite of the elite graduate programs, and they never wanted to ease those restrictions for football players where other schools make certain kinds of concessions. What do you think about them trading academics for potential football success?
This is Stanford saying essentially, look, because Stanford's always been like, hey, we're not going to essentially make our academics worse to make our athletics better.
Right.
Stanford's not that school. Notre Dame is not that school. People want to
uncompromising.
Notre Dame has the same kind of rules and stuff like that, like a Stanford. But which is why Notre Dame hasn't won anything in like 36 years themselves. But Notre Dame does do a good job of getting the recruits that Stanford would probably get. But this is a big deal, like I said, for the programs like basketball and the Olympic sports, that they're not always going to go pro. And if they do go pro, it may not be like superstars or something like that. But this is a scary proposition for anybody, because Stanford wants to dominate all the sports they can. And now they're basically saying, in order for our athletics to survive, we're going to have to sacrifice a little bit of our academics. And those academics are post-bachelorate degrees. So your master's programs, your PhD programs, all of that, they're going to sit back and go, hey, we can still get we got to have good athletes we're in a conference that's all the way over there. If we can sacrifice a little bit here, we can get there. And they want to compete. And the scary proposition is football, because as we all know, football, people go, well, Stanford doesn't care. The 31,000 at the Pac-12 title game, blah, 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 blah. Stanford grads are rich. And if you ever get them to care about football, if they actually want to care about football, like people think their school cares about football, they would be Alabama, because you can't outspend them. They have more billionaires than you have.
Yes. It has always been a case of rules and motivation, right?
Yeah. Like they know what they want to do. They're going to do it now. And, they still have they have great ambassadors playing football or have played football. You have the John Elways, the Christian McCaffreys, the Andrew Lucks. They're all out there. And if people say, well, they don't care about football, they hired Jim Harbaugh. They upgraded their facilities. They remodeled their football stadium. They care about football. They may not care on the level like you want them to care, but if they did care on that level, your school would be obsolete because they would own it.
Yeah. We've always said from the start, football, they love all their sports. They care about all their sports deeply, but all of their sports are on this same level. Football is no different than track. It's no different than softball. It's no different than any basketball. They're all the same, but they do care about them a lot. Every other school obviously throws football way out here because football generates the money, and that's not, Stanford doesn't need it. They truly don't. They don't actually need the money. The reason why they're concerned about getting a media deal is because it's good business, right? You join a conference to make as much money as possible.
Stanford could probably buy half the NFL stadiums, and have money left over.
It's just about if it's a good investment or not. Yeah. They're all about good investments. But what I threw up here is actually an excerpt from our good friend John Wilner. Love him or hate him, he is certainly plugged into West Coast football. And the part that caught my eye, if the ACC crumbles, Cal and Stanford undoubtedly will attempt to join the Big Ten and create a 6-team West Coast division that makes sense for fans and athletes. Reforming the Pac-12 or Big 12 would be secondary considerations. I find that really curious because we heard kind of mixed reports about their interest in joining the Big Ten at the same time Oregon and Washington did, both from their side and whether the Big Ten would even be willing to take them. You're a little more plugged in, but it sounded like Stanford got far more consideration than Cal, but their refusal to join the Big Ten Academic Alliance was the deal breaker.
Yeah. Stanford got the same considerations that Washington and Oregon got. The Big Ten felt, after talking it over with Fox, the Big Ten was basically like, these two are the two, not this one. But no, Stanford makes sense in the Big Ten. Cal makes sense in the Big Ten, and these are two schools who took made huge concessions to join the ACC.
Yes.
Let's be frank here. You don't think they'll do it again to join the Big Ten? Yeah, they will. And Cal gets paid by UCLA, like they're getting the full $10 million. So if Cal were to do it, they'd probably have to go in and pull in SMU and do it for nothing so that the other schools get richer. But while UCLA is paying Cal money, Cal could afford it. Stanford, we know Stanford could pay for it if they chose. So
does UCLA vouch for Cal with the caveat that they then relent on the Cal money?
UCLA doesn't have a choice. They have the same board of regents. Doesn't matter.
But the situation can change, and they could lobby to say, hey, they're in our conference now, and why are we paying them?
Nope.
I'm not saying it's likely.
No. I'm saying like
that would be possible.
Cal's administration would have to explain to the board of regents what the deal is.
Right.
And I would bet because Cal would have to take next to nothing, Cal would still get their Cal money.
Yeah. And Cal, I don't think is in, to be honest, I don't think Cal's in.
In fact, I bet you the Cal money would go up if they had to take nothing to get in. So
true, and they'd be given less than a half share. There's no other way around it, and that's just not from a Washington, Oregon ego.
That's just a fact.
That's just from a money and situationally. Like Fox isn't going to shell out this giant amount more to add a team like Cal, especially given the state of things right now. They're already paying for 18 teams. That's a lot of money. Like that is a lot of money for Fox to shell out. It's not infinite pools of money they're dipping into.
I don't think Cal and Stanford are connected at the hip.
No, I don't think so either.
I think I would almost guarantee that if Notre Dame decided they wanted to join tomorrow, Stanford would join with Notre Dame.
Do they relent on the academic portion, though? Because that's always been the hiccup with Stanford and consideration to the Big Ten for the last several years. And it's my opinion that they were supposed to be USC's travel partner, but never made it past preliminary talks because they refused to join the academic alliance.
So there's like this weird rumor. Oregon fans have been spreading this.
I gave into the rumor
that Oregon was the first choice before UCLA to go with USC. No, that's nowhere near true.
That's not a thing.
And that they were the choice over Washington. No,
Washington wasn't first choice either. I'll admit that.
No, we weren't first choice. But when it came down to like who we would add, I mean, they really did like Washington and Oregon. It quickly became apparent that Fox was like, we'll pay for Washington, but we would prefer to have another school.
Oregon. Naturally.
Oregon got the call because the two schools, regardless of what people think, the two schools have a great relationship with each other at the administration level.
Yeah, non-rivalry-wise, that's the thing. Non-rivalry-wise, Oregon and Washington, as far as academics and everything else and sharing research and resources, their presidents and board of regents are great friends. They know each other really well. It's like a love. Like we hate each other on the field, but they are very connected. They work on research projects together and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, they do a lot of stuff together. And this two schools, like they talk a lot. They have the same. They're competing for the same students. Forget athletics. They compete for the same students in both states. So their big things like working together in partnership, it works out well for both schools.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a quick, easy, like, well, if we're going to go, we'll just grab our rival. So it didn't matter who was first because both schools were told you're not getting in without the other. So
yeah. It's curious to know where, I mean, we'll never know the answer, but it's curious to know where Stanford actually fit into the Big Ten and Fox discussion because they had to have been discussed. It had
they were.
Even if they said no, we don't want them, it had to have come up. What do we do about Stanford? What is their value?
No, they were vetted. They were vetted at the same time Washington, Oregon, and I think TCU was vetted, which is weird. TCU got an interview. They were all doing it in Chicago.
I'm curious. I mean, it's possible. I'd have to do a deep dive into that.
And the whole TCU thing was because TCU's in Dallas.
How do we get into Texas?
How do we get into Texas?
Yeah.
What is this good for us? It's a big thing. And let me just say this, like people like Big 12 fans, like, we don't want Cal, we don't want Stanford. Yeah, you do. They open up California for your recruiting grounds, which right now are Texas.
Yeah, California recruiting is that's also why UCF was so big for the Big 12. Just getting a toehold into Florida,
getting in there.
Schools of football recruiting: California, Texas, and Florida. Not like full stop. Those are the three football recruiting hotbeds. They're massive populations, and they all produce football talent. Even California, way out here in the West Coast, like go look at SEC and Big Ten rosters and see how many people are from California. It's a lot.
It's a lot.
There are more California players on Washington's roster than people from the state of Washington. They have so many people, and they play a lot of ball. So it makes perfect sense to try and add them. I just don't think Cal and Stanford, even in a diminished ACC, in my opinion, their order of preference is stay in the ACC, finally relent and join the Big Ten, depending on the situation, or go independent.
Yeah.
Or join the Ivy League. I don't know. But
and let's be honest,
it's not on their radar.
The money, they have the ACC schools have a contract until 2036. even if you can buy your way out, right? Let's say they're going to end up settling because the ACC is going to be like, no, we don't want to destroy this. Mostly because the other conferences are going to be like, we don't want you destroying this. Settle it. There'll be a lot of pressure on the ACC to settle it and get them out. Because, like I said, all conferences, forget just the Power Five, all conferences want a grant of rights. So that contract, it behooves some of these schools to stay together because guess what? ESPN has to honor that contract. Unless there's obviously, and you and I don't know this, like nobody's read the contract. They can't even get the thing released in court. The Attorney General for the state of Florida is trying to get the stupid thing. But like, if you want to create a Big 12 network, think about this. If they want to create a Big 12 network,
there's our main man, Yormark, and he's been hinting at the expansion. And not to cut you off, but to me, as soon as you said they need to settle, this is where my mind went. Settling is not about trying to retain Florida State and Clemson. Nope. It is about trying to save NC State or Virginia Tech or, all of those schools that are looking toward the Big 12. It's about making it either costly enough that they don't want to leave or giving them enough value and kickback that the Big 12 isn't necessarily a better option. That's their only path to survival, in my opinion. You got to assume that North Carolina and Clemson and Florida State are gone, and probably one other. People say Virginia, some people say Miami, but just assume those are gone. It's about retaining the schools that would otherwise look at the Big 12 to me.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, California, if they want to create their own network, having California with all of that money that would generate from being able to have a network, because instead of $1, you're paying, $4. That's 50 million people. California has a population of 50 plus million people. Yeah, you want to. It's a great way to easily generate more revenue for the conference. So everything about Cal and Stanford makes sense. Everything about UVA, Miami, Georgia Tech, Syracuse, Boston College, all of it makes sense. But at this point, if they stuck together.
Yeah, it's just there's so much in the air about it because we don't have the full details on what it would cost and when they'll be able to leave the ACC, but that totally determines what happens after. What it takes for Florida and Clemson to leave will absolutely determine whether the ACC retains a lot of members or is just completely ripped to the studs.
Yeah, and like this quote here.
Yeah,
Bob Thompson put all 12 Pac-12 schools in a tiered list, and he listed them 1 through 12, right? And he said he goes, these are even. If I made them all even numbers, it really did go Washington, Stanford, Oregon, and I think it was Arizona State at 4. So
the explanation
I should say the 10, but not the 12, because the other two.
The explanation I heard with this that made perfect sense to me. It was actually Oregon higher than 30 million, but he was saying Oregon has most closely approached its maximum value of what it could possibly get. Washington and Stanford, in theory, could do things to increase their value, and Arizona State also in a massive market. Phoenix is like number 4 or 5 in the country.
All three of those schools are top 12 markets.
Yeah,
like
these other Pac schools could get more than they are, but Oregon is like peaked out, which it's not a bad thing. They're maximizing their value. They're killing it in marketing. They have the Nike machine behind them. That's awesome. But it's like there's not as much headroom with Oregon compared to these other schools. So that's why I assume he's saying Stanford is at 45 million. It's Bay Area, but it's making the Bay Area care about football has always been the challenge.
And I mean, getting the eyeballs of the Bay Area, because most people who live in the Bay Area did not go to Stanford, did not go to Cal.
No.
they didn't go to Washington.
They're tough schools for
Oregon,
anyone.
they go to USC,
Truly.
UCLA. They went everywhere because it's it's a major city. It's the same thing in like Seattle. Most graduates from the University of Washington live in Seattle, but most of the population of Seattle did not go to Washington. So
correct. I'm not an alumni. I'm just an idiot. I never went to college. But I think the difference with Washington is, although it is a very difficult school to get into, their enrollment tends to be pretty high compared to some of these other schools. It's like 35,000, I think.
Yeah, it's a 40%. It's a 40%. Like that's where it sits. Like 40% of the applicants will get it. Whereas like
UW's enrollment is fairly big compared to like a Stanford, which is tiny.
Yeah. But Stanford's only letting in 1%. I think USC lets in less than 5%, and I believe UCLA and Cal are flagship schools. They're only letting in like 10%. But it's again, like you have the Texas and the Ohio States that have like 40,000, 50,000 students. So that's where all this plays a role. And that's what, Bob was basically saying, look, they have this huge market. Oregon doesn't have a market, and it's not a bad thing for Oregon, because Oregon, like you said, they've done the best thing in the world, which I think most of the fans live in Florida and Texas, which
they have a limited local market.
Yeah,
it's true.
Their market is Portland, but Portland is a shared market with essentially the University of Washington and Oregon State. So
they have made the most of the national branding for sure. Absolutely,
they've done it, and that's why Oregon is the moneymaker that they are for like the Big Ten. They can justify, because they're like, look, Oregon's going to draw eyeballs everywhere.
Yep.
USC does, UCLA does. People are like, well, Washington's a regional thing. Washington might be regional, but they still have as many eyeballs, if not more, than Oregon, which is that's why it's so crazy. And before anybody says anything, Stanford for 10 years got more eyeballs than Oregon at times. So they averaged roughly what Oregon got. So it's crazy.
Yeah, Sooner in Texas, when we're talking about a team's value, we're talking about their TV value. Primarily, we're talking about their football TV value. Yeah. Apologies if we didn't explain. There is a difference between like academic value to a conference and TV value to a network. Yeah. Those are different things.
Like academics still have to play a role, because they want to make sure if you fit culturally with us. Are you a good a good fit? Like, can we do?
You got to meet a certain level to even be considered. But then on top of that, you have to bring TV value, football viewership, and performance.
Yeah, and like before anybody says anything, I know we got a lot of Big 12 fans. Basketball's not a big moneymaker here. Some schools like Kansas, Duke, North Carolina, Connecticut, Gonzaga,
it can be. It can be a money driver.
But even UW's basketball team makes money.
Schools.
Yeah, UW's basketball team is a moneymaker. So it's not a non-revenue sport. So all of these things do it, and they all play a little bit of a role, but it's football. Football is the moneymaker. Like, I don't want anybody to be offended, but outside of the NCAA tournament, you will not find a single you may find one or two Kansas games that were able to actually beat their football program in viewership.
Yeah.
Like it's wild, but that's the reality of it.
Perhaps that'll change in the future. I know that's certainly Yormark's plan, and
it sounds like he's looking.
By assembling the best basketball programs he can, like a UConn, that I totally understand his game plan, but Ryan Cole pointing out lots of big grads live in San Francisco. Yes, Silicon Valley, you have all that tech money. And ironically, there are probably more Big Ten fans that are than fans of Stanford and Cal in the Bay Area combined.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, like Michigan, that's what I keep saying. Like Michigan and Ohio State have humongous, student bodies. They graduate and they go somewhere. And obviously, nobody from Ohio lives in Ohio.
Except for Moen, just Moen.
Nobody else.
He's the king of Ohio.
Everybody from Ohio has moved out of Ohio, and everybody from everywhere else has now moved to Ohio. Does that make sense to people?
Makes sense if you don't think about it. So what's your final call with Stanford? Where do you see it going forward? And just make a bold call. I mean, subject to change. Where do they end up? Where do they end up, in your opinion, 5 years from now? Where is Stanford?
I think they're in the ACC.
Okay.
I don't think the ACC implodes like people think.
That was my follow-up question. What does the ACC look like in 5 years?
They're not going to have at least the 3. Nobody can figure out who 4 will be, but there's a lot of things to like put into play with that. We don't know if UNC wants to become the big dog on the block. We don't know if UVA wants to become the big dog on the block. We don't know if those 2 schools have to have their backpacks with them, and Virginia Tech and NC State. And again, this is why they got to the numbers that they have. It's 17 is what it is now with those 3 additions, SMU, Stanford, and Cal, is so that even if you take those 4, they still have a viable conference. You take 4 and they still have a viable conference because they still have as long as Notre Dame stays in play, they have a viable conference.
And I think that's the backbreaker is the incentive. It's a lot easier for Notre Dame to get out of their agreement because they're not fully bound by it. They are for other sports, but they're not technically like a full voting member of the conference.
Correct.
Genetics 56. We're here for all opinions, good, bad, or otherwise. Let's just take them at face value, people. Stanford will be on the list for 21 through 24, but not 20. No discussion. Okay.
I mean, I don't think he's wrong. The thing is, like,
they push themselves down the road for sure.
They push themselves down the road, but we're guessing. We have to guess because the SEC is playing their poker face and acting like they don't want those 2. We don't know what they want to do. Like, we'd have to guess. Like, but I keep saying to people, if the SEC doesn't want Florida State and Clemson, then Also, that's why I don't think Florida State and Clemson get a full share, because if there's nobody to like compete against, why are you going to give them a full share?
Yeah, it does make sense trending in SEC history. If you look at, times change and football landscape is totally different now, but look at who they've brought in the past. South Carolina, brand new state to them. And then Missouri later on, brand new state. A&M, brand new state. Oklahoma. You take Texas because it's Texas, and doubling up in Texas is not a bad thing.
No. And that's
my logic for doubling up in Florida is not a bad thing. Clemson is kind of hit or miss more so.
No, and like we have like Shonsky's, like the ACC won't survive with it, won't be with Florida State and Clemson, but it'll survive. Correct. Florida State did not join the ACC until 1991. They were
independent forever.
So the ACC will be fine. The ACC will be okay. Florida State has their viewers. They had viewers before. Those viewers stayed. They have more viewers now because they played and actually won national titles finally. So they didn't have one until, like 1993.
But their program only started in like 1950. They're way younger program.
They're way younger program than a lot of people. And the other thing,
like all-time history rankings, they won't rank as high, but they have like half the length of time. So they've done quite well when they've been a program.
Yeah, and it's the same thing like Miami. Miami didn't. They almost folded their football program in the late 70s. Like 5-6 years before they won a national title, the university was voting to get rid of the football program.
Shonsky. So I did a deep dive on TV viewership since 2015. I used a lot of the same data Ute has. Take it for a grain of salt, but it wasn't adjusted for opponent or network or time slot. It was just raw TV numbers was all I had to go on because I didn't have the additional data. And it actually punched out that Florida State and Clemson both, if you just went by numbers, deserve, now whether they would get it is different. They deserve a better share than Oregon and Washington do. They've generated higher average TV viewership over those years.
I will say this. If they do settle to get out of it, they have to get a better share because of the amount of money that it's going to cost. So, I don't think they'll get a full share. I do think they'll get a better share than Washington and Oregon, but only because they
different situation.
Different situation. They have to get a better deal because they might be paying $200 million, $300. We have no idea. $200.
Is it a hit to the ego? Yeah, is it a hit to the ego for Huskies and Ducks? Maybe a little bit.
Maybe a little bit, but I mean, at the same time,
they're in a small boat looking to get into a big boat. We were no boat, no nothing. We're treading water.
Also, we should point this out. Washington and Oregon had they had other suitors, but not for a great number.
Yeah.
We have to think and believe that Florida State Clemson could have the SEC coming for them, and that could help out. Like I said, a little bit more of a bid, a competitive situation will help them. But at the same time, let's think about this, and I want your opinion on this. If Florida State and Clemson can't get out until like 2026 or 2027, which is like 5 years before the contract ends anyway, do you think they get a full share in that scenario because of how it's going to have to work out?
I don't think they'd get a full. I think they would get an increased cut, like you're saying, like above what Oregon and Washington. Like Oregon and Washington's actually scales up incrementally towards the end of contract. Yeah. By the end of contract, I think they're getting something closer to like 70 or 75%.
Yeah.
It just goes up incrementally.
It goes up. And that's the other thing. Like Fox something is like paying Fox. Scale. Yeah. Fox is paying for UW and Oregon.
Yes.
The other NBC and CBS are not paying for this. So NBC and CBS would have to be okay with doing it. And guess what? I don't know if NBC is going to be okay with it because they just got the NBA for a huge number. And both are going to have to deal with the NFL right about the same time that Big Ten contract's up. So,
well, the back half of that is NBC now has Stanford, but who is Stanford playing?
Yeah, like
do they shell the money? So
like, oh yeah, again, they still have Notre Dame. Like NBC's getting ready to give Notre Dame a pay raise. So where's the money coming from? You're hoping essentially that CBS is like, we'll foot the bill. But
Terry Kane giving me a correction. I'm all to being wrong. If you got solid info, ND is a voting member, just not talked about. Okay, I may have missed.
Oh, I didn't hear you say that.
Football.
No, they have full say. That's how they got.
Okay.
That's how Stanford and Cal got in. SMU had to buy their way in, obviously, because they chose not to take any money. No, this is a huge thing. Like, and as far as like the Big 12 goes, the Big 12 is going to go after a Stanford and a Cal because, again, the administrators respect two schools. And regardless of how you feel about quote unquote academics, you want to get your foot in that state for the academics because it's a good way to like get into California and say to these kids who, by the way, California's got really good academic standards overall. You're going to get the smarter kids than where you're currently getting them from. You want to have your brand on TV there and in that footprint. So the kids see it, the athletes see it, everybody sees it. It will be discussed, and if they were to like come up as available, I could see them going to the Big 12 over an NC State.
It's possible.
Also, they have 4 friends who will gladly vouch for them. So.
Yeah, Sooner text says, does academic fit matter to academians? Surely it doesn't matter to the networks only looking for TV viewers.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
I mean, you have to get the presidents have to say yes, and the networks have to say yes, and they both have to give the green light, which is why academics and TV matters. Like, you can be better in one and not good in the other, but like you have to bring a little bit of each.
You have to bring
like
both.
Washington is a significantly better academic school than Oregon. But Oregon has that national brand appeal that TV wants.
And when we say,
it's a balance.
All sincerity, we say this, and Big Ten fans have said this too. Washington is the most Big Ten school not in the Big Ten. Like
we have a lot of relationships with other Big Ten schools, even when we were in the Pac-12, as far as academics and things.
And we are not just working with them, but we are like culturally, you can't tell the difference between Washington and like a school in the Big Ten. Also, our tailgates are next level. People don't understand that.
We'll not dive into that, but Grayson says in here that the academians are the one who cast the vote. And yes, the presidents have to sign off. Absolutely. Yeah. And Sooner Texas agrees. That's the thing. It's a balancing act. It's like, it's the same reason why, that's why the Big Ten would want Stanford, but they have to bring enough TV value for the network to say yes. And it's just a balancing act.
And we're not talking like their Olympic sports. Yeah. Okay. It's cool. Stanford's women's basketball team. Yeah. It's really good. Stanford's men's basketball team can be, it has been in the past, but
It doesn't drive money, though. That's
exactly. What does your football program break? Because the NCAA tournament is the moneymaker for basketball programs.
Yep.
That's how you make your money. Because the NCAA has the contract, not the conference. The conference just has a contract so they can broadcast your games so you're on TV. Yep. But when you're only drawing like 300,000 viewers and it's a random game between Kansas and Stanford, that's not doing it, because Stanford and Kansas in football is going to possibly draw 1.2 million, 1.5 million, depending on how good they are. If Kansas is really bad, we can get into that, but but that's what it is.
Our dueling Big Ten friends, presidents vote fine, networks are paying, you're not getting in. That's exactly the reason Oregon and Washington got half. That's what the networks would agree to. It's not, I mean, call it an ego trip, but it's not because Washington and Oregon are worth less than Purdue, Northwestern, and Indiana. It's because that was the networks were willing to agree to. It's the nature of the game. Stanford, no, says Ryan Willie. Yeah, I mean, you'll learn to love them, because the Stanford friends you do meet are really smart and sometimes socially awkward, but they are fairly nice people. I will say that.
And like Daniel Gygax asked a great question too. Like, I can see a lot of SEC value, FSU or Clemson playing. Yeah, that's where the value comes in as well.
Culturally, that's a great fit. That's been the thing with the SEC is they're a natural fit with their southern rivals who they already play out of conference. Do you just fold that in? But that's what I brought up about the SEC history. They have traditionally, they want new market, new state, new market, new market, new market. And I think you could make that case that doubling up in Florida is still good because of the population, but does doubling up for Clemson make sense over a UNC in a brand new state? And I think if the SEC had their perfect situation, they would take Florida State and UNC and call it a day.
Oh yeah. And like he asked, like, will they get the same viewership as Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Wisconsin? Like, yeah. USC at Florida State at like Oregon or Washington.
Yeah.
Clemson at USC.
Washington at Clemson, Oregon at Clemson, USC whatever.
They were drawing, let's just be honest.
State. That'd be amazing.
Washington and Oregon were drawing 2.5 million viewers playing like just in bad years when they weren't good against really bad Wazoo teams, really bad Colorado teams. Yeah. They're gonna draw viewers. Like, they're gonna draw.
I'm not sure if someone else's show just let out, but I appreciate everyone hopping in here. I'm seeing some new faces. Yeah. Grayson, networks are tapped out when it comes to media. Bo Weevil, hello guys, go Clemson. Go Clemson. I have had no hate whatsoever for Clemson. I would love to go watch my Huskies play down in Death Valley. That'd be incredible.
Yeah. Like, that would be awesome. I mean, someone's in here like, oh yeah, it'd be really bad. No, no one's saying that. What we're saying is
being one of a half dozen teams in the top 25 and don't get
hold on.
We're not saying Kansas
don't get it
is really bad.
But I'm asking Steve this question. If number 5 Kansas is playing number like 20 Purdue,
football or basketball?
Both sports. Which one's going to draw more eyeballs?
Yeah, Steve, our point was just to illustrate that Kansas football is much improved, but even when Kansas was bad in football, their football program still generated more money than their basketball program every year.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't include merchandise and T-shirts and whatever, but just raw earnings per sport, their football program still made more money.
But if it came down to like a Kansas and like, say, an NC State for like the Big Ten or the SEC, who are they going to take? They're going to take the one with the better basketball program. Like, that ends up being the deciding factor, because they know they'll draw some more. They can get a little bit more money for that basketball program in Kansas, especially playing a Kentucky, than they would, an NC State playing Kentucky, because they're blue blood programs in basketball. So,
yeah, Steve, we're not trying to pick on you, man. No. Don't take this as hate against Kansas. We're just the TV networks pay for viewership. That's all we're saying. We'd love to see Kansas succeed at both. That'd be awesome.
Like
don't misinterpret that as hate.
Don't misinterpret it as hate. All we're saying is football is the driving factor. That's it.
Football is king. It's the nature
football
of the game.
Is what the only. Do you think UW got into the Big Ten because they have a good basketball program?
Well, they don't, and they didn't.
They don't. So. They never have. Like, come on. Like, nobody watches it.
You could argue that UCLA got into the Big Ten because of their basketball.
No. UCLA got in because of where they're located.
That's
because
true.
of their basketball program, more so than. But
yeah, they're the
draws eyeballs.
Bruin backpack for the Trojans.
Yeah, like it was like Fox was like, we're not giving you that much money, but hey, we will if you grab UCLA because now we own New York and LA. It's weird. It's weird.
Yeah. Steve Moser. I think certain sports are regional, and I will say basketball is not as big on the West Coast, at least at the college level. It's just not. It's very, very football centric.
A good basketball game draws like 1 million people.
Yeah.
A half decent football game draws 900,000.
Yeah. If you have any questions or comments for us, we're two Husky fans in the Northwest. To all our new friends joining us in chat, as long as you keep them civil and nice, we don't mind you disagreeing with us or calling us out when we're wrong. But go ahead and throw them in chat. Super chats are always appreciated, also. But really happy to see everyone joining us.
Look at Ryan Willie going right after Purdue. They were in the top 25 fairly. Recently.
Picking on Purdue is like picking on the kid that can't fight back. That's not fair.
I want to do it. It's fun. It's Purdue.
I've always felt bad for Purdue. I don't know if it's because I like Cliff Averill, Seahawks legend and Purdue Boilermaker. I've always had a soft spot for Purdue. That might just be me.
Hey, I was at the Rose Bowl and I watched Drew Brees play for Purdue. So
indeed. Yeah, Huskies Rose Bowl 2001 was against a very good Purdue team. So we have history there for sure.
I mean, it wasn't a good Purdue team, but they managed. I don't know how they won the Big Ten, but they managed to win the Big Ten. Smash that like button.
Our friend Joaquin, Arizona State Sun Devil. Hey, Becky Sergeant Pickles, CFB fam, stopping by. Appointment in 40 minutes. Smash that. It's free. Joaquin, I just want to say I hope your wife is doing better. I know that you've had some things going on lately, but I hope you and the family are all doing well, my friend.
Yeah. I mean, it's all great. Like this, like I said, realignment's going to happen. I personally think the Big 12 is going to go, hey, who's got a good football program, but also has a decent basketball program? I think they're going to do that because like we keep saying, the NCAA pays for that. You get more money the more teams you get into the NCAA tournament. Like, that's going to be a big deal. Like, that's a deal to people. Like, they're going to go after it. And again, no offense to Purdue, you're not going to be ranked top 25 ever again in football, probably. So,
yeah, it would take a big. I mean, in this era, it's all about NIL push, and they've put theirs toward basketball, which is fine. But teams are going to have to allocate resources differently than they used to. Go Black 45. If all teams are undefeated, which game would you rather be at? Oregon PSU or Texas Tennessee? I would say that it depends on what stadium it's at. If it's
that's a
Penn State or I don't know about Kyle Field, but like a home game at Rocky Top or at Penn State or like elite level in my mind. Oregon, this isn't just Husky hate. Oregon Stadium is only like 50K. It's a rowdy crowd, but it just doesn't have the imposing 100,000 atmosphere. So if it's at Penn State or at Tennessee, I think that's actually a really even matchup.
No, agree. And he specifically put in there whiteout. So they're saying a whiteout or UT Tennessee. I'm going to go with the whiteout because that just seems like legendary. I don't care how good the teams are. They could both be 0-11. I'll still watch that stupid game in person.
Shonsky, our favorite Big Ten hater, but I love you out there, buddy. Viewership has nothing to do with brand based on team population for viewership. Oregon has proven that isn't true.
Yeah, Oregon kind of proves that.
Oregon's population is not very big, but Oregon draws very, very good average viewership, even on years where they're maybe not like a nationally competitive team. Like they'll still have good seasons, but if they're more than 8 wins, they're drawing good TV numbers. Yep. They're a nationally recognized brand, and Oregon population just isn't high enough for that to make sense. So they might be the exception to the rule, but yes, obviously having a large metro is better. But look at, there's really no team in New York that dominates. Syracuse does okay. And in the Bay Area, Stanford and Cal do okay, and their populations are massive.
And having a big population area is a good thing because it makes up for those programs who don't have the blue blood status. Nebraska doesn't have a lot of people, but they're a blue blood. They draw a lot of eyeballs. And Nebraska fans are all over the country because they saw them be good and their parents saw them be good, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Michigan, Ohio State, Alabama now. Like even Alabama's always been great. They've always gotten great viewers. Georgia's now starting to like get that, like, because people are seeing it. People are wanting to watch them play. People want to see the best teams. College football has become what the NFL is, in which they want to see the best of the best play. If you're good, they'll start drawing eyeballs. And the longer you're good, the more eyeballs you will eventually draw. That's how you build your brand. You have to be good.
Apologies for any distortion in the background. My young children are protesting my garbage takes on here as always. So thank you for bearing with me for my shady audio. Mystery Man, I'm going to assume you're an SEC fan just based on some other comments I've seen. It says, Big Ten, come to our conference. We have Nooners. FSU, really? Huh. Oh. You know, East Coast thing, I get it, but like they're offering the same thing the SEC is in terms of time slots. They'll put them in prime time. They'll put them on different days. Washington's going to play a lot of late night games, but I would rather play 5 p.m. on NBC on a Friday on a standalone primetime game for the Huskies than Pac-12 after dark when nobody on the East Coast is watching on ESPN2. You know, how good is the ACC network by comparison? I don't think it is. So it's you know, which would you rather have?
And I mean, like noon, you're playing the big noon game on the West Coast. That's 9 a.m. We're just waking up.
Like, we're drinking mimosas and still slamming coffee at that time. So
we're probably making our way to the stadiums for our noon games because we have noon games too. But Washington and Oregon, UCLA and USC know we're going to have 5 p.m. games on Saturdays because that's going to be our spot. Like the Big Ten essentially has said, we now can go from noon Eastern to midnight Eastern. They have 12 hours now of football. No other conference can say that outside of who?
No.
The ACC can almost do it. Well, almost can now. But yeah, like that's it. If they're the only two conferences that can say it. That's why, like, I don't see the SEC will never go west unless USC picks up the phone and says, we want to play for you.
Unlikely. But that's why Fox shelled out the money, is that, you know, late night time slots were valuable. They absolutely were. So we're going to be wrapping up here. But
we got a super chat.
We do. Timothy Green, let's go. Great show as usual. Let's go Mountaineers. Appreciate Timothy. And our friend Ryan Willie, super chat. Much appreciated, my friend. Where will the Big Ten SEC stop, 20 or 24? We'll make this our final question of the day. Becky, you first, because my brain needs a second to think about it. So which one for each? Start with the Big Ten.
I think the Big Ten is going to go to 22.
Okay.
I don't see the SEC.
That wasn't an option.
No, I don't see the SEC going past 18. Again, all of this, my 22 is dependent upon one school, Notre Dame. I don't see, there's no other value out there after Notre Dame. If you add a Notre Dame, you can then get in the merits of, you guys can see my dog back there.
Indeed.
But you can we can get in the merits of who's the next school to travel with Notre Dame. Miami, Stanford, who cares? But the SEC, they have no desire to go bigger, I think, bigger than 18 or 20. Because for them, it's like, who else can you add? If Florida State and Clemson go to the Big Ten, that puts them at 20. How do you get to 20 if you're the SEC? Who else adds that value? The only other school that could do it would be you'd have to get Notre Dame, and you have to get your footprint in Notre Dame. Would they add Notre Dame and then take a Stanford? Highly unlikely.
I don't know.
I don't see them going past, would they take a Notre Dame and a UNC? Absolutely. A UNC and a Virginia? Absolutely. But getting past 20, I think it gets really, really difficult. And I think it gets difficult really for both conferences. There's not much left. Like if they both got the 24, who are they? That's 8 more schools. We haven't even figured out 8 schools for the Big 12, let alone 8 schools.
I think what I've settled on for sure, and I'll kind of end this here. I realized it was 6:30, so I may have to go in a little bit of a rush. I think the Big 10 settles at 24, and this is subject to change. It's just a hot take call. They're going to get Florida State, Clemson, and then the 4 they're adding on is Stanford, Notre Dame, Kansas, and Georgia Tech. That's my hot take for the Big 10. You're all going to call me an idiot. That's fine. It's just where I'm at right now. SEC is going to go to 20 and be happy with it. They're going to take UNC and Virginia. And then I think later on they take Colorado. And I think they end up with Miami.
I think they end up with Miami.
It's way out in left field, but that's just where I'm at.
I will be honest with you. If the SEC had another target in Florida, it is not Florida State. I fully believe it's Miami. You can't convince me it's not. I think it's Miami.
Florida.
For one reason and one reason only. South Florida. Guess where all the talent is in the state of Florida when it comes to football? The bulk of it, South Florida.
Yeah, but that's
you can draw a line and actually connect the dots.
That is not what I think is going to happen 100%. That's just my hot take getting to numbers right now.
No.
Projecting a million years into the future.
I'm right there with you. I don't know. Colorado?
Yeah, did I mention Kansas to the Big 10? Was that in my list?
Yeah, you said Kansas.
Yeah, Kansas Big 10.
I don't.
Yeah, Tony's saying I'm crazy even for a Marine. Yeah, the crayons go to your head after a while, buddy.
Yeah, I'm like Shonsky here. Dead right. I've been saying this too. I don't think the Big 10 has any desire to go past 20. I don't think the SEC wants to go to 18. I think they're like, we're getting paid. Like maybe in 7 years they'll rediscuss this. We'll see what the market says.
Yep.
Maybe it happens. Maybe it doesn't. But right now, Florida State and Clemson are trying to see if they have a home in either conference. They might not have a home in either conference. We don't know yet.
I think we're going to have to call it there. As you can see, my kids are protesting more than usual.
Kids are done.
Apologies for the quick exit, everybody. But thank you so much for being here, everyone that popped in and chat. And we'll be back next Monday, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific. And check out our other shows throughout the week on the College Football Mafia Show. And from myself and Becky, have a good week. Peace out.
Peace out.